Okay, so another edition of Right to Travel Debunked. This time we're going to deal with Dickey versus Davis, also referred to on sovereign citizens websites as ex parte Dickey. And the quote in this case comes from Freedom for All, who writes, quote, "The right of the citizen to travel upon the highway and to transport his property thereon in the ordinary course of life and business is the usual and ordinary right of the citizen, the right common to all." Ex parte Dickey, Dickey versus Davis, 85 SC 781. Now, as you can probably imagine, this quote is radically taken out of context and has parts of it cut out to change the meaning of what the court said. The full quote is, as said by the Supreme Court of West Virginia, quote, "The right of a citizen to travel upon the highway and transport his property thereon in the ordinary course of life and business differs radically and obviously from one who makes the highway his place of business and uses it for private gain in the running of a stagecoach or omnibus. The former, quote, the right of the citizen to travel, is the usual and ordinary right of a citizen, a common right, a right common to all, while the latter, the use of highways for commercial use, is special, unusual, and extraordinary. As to the former, the right to travel, the extent of legislative power is that of regulation. So according to Dickey versus Davis, the legislature does have the right to regulate your right to travel. This is made clear in City of Elkins versus Joshua G. Black, a state of West Virginia Supreme Court of Appeals case from August 2015, in which a guy used the Dickey argument and failed. Quote, "On appeal, petitioner argues that West Virginia Code blah 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 is unconstitutional because it violates his constitutional right to travel and to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. And two, he is only required to obtain a license to drive a vehicle on public highways and roads if he drives a vehicle on public highways for commercial gain." This is what the court responded. Quote, "Petitioner replies upon this court opinion in ex parte Dickey blah blah in support of his claim, but Dickey does not stand for the proposition that the West Virginia legislature lacks the authority to impose licensing requirements on citizens. Importantly, in that decision, this court noted that, as to the right of a citizen to travel upon the highway and transport his property thereon, the extent of legislative power is that of regulation. This court also noted in Dickey that legislatures have regulated different forms of vehicles on public roads since this country's early history. We explained the need for such regulation over a decade later in State v. Masters. Quote, "With the constantly increasing use of motor vehicles for both business and pleasure purposes, the demand for regulations in their use on our public highways has become imperative. A highway is for the use of the public at large. Indeed, it has been defined to be a road which every citizen has a right to travel. This being so, it is necessary that the travel thereon shall be governed by certain laws so that rights of each citizen may be certain of protection." As explained above, Dickey does not support petitioner's contention that a valid license to drive a vehicle is required only for business purposes. As we explained briefly in Masters, there is a need to regulate motor vehicles for both business and pleasure purposes. Or, to put it in even simpler terms, the government has the power to require you to get a license to use the highways whether or not you are engaged in commerce. I searched to find how many websites, how many right to travel websites refer to the Dickey decision. I found like a dozen websites, and several people have left the fake, the out of context Dickey quote, citing it as evidence, but obviously they've never read it. So look, this is, again, all these right to travel websites are doing the same thing. They're taking quotes out of context and misrepresenting them. They're spreading disinformation. If you actually read the quotes, they never actually say that you don't need a license to use the highways.